Hello, listeners. You're listening to episode 17 of 8 Minute Movies, Knives 8, a podcast talking about the 2022 movie Glass Onion. Ooh.
What?
In 8-minute chunks, even though that bit's not really true. Presented by me, Kieran, and him, Peter. Hello, Peter. Wow, look at this. A bonus episode.
Bonus episode.
A boner episode.
Yes, we have seen the film Glass Onion in a cinema.
Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
It was very hard to get them to stop the film every 8 minutes so that we could go and record a podcast about it, but we got there in the end.
The rest of the audience were not into it as much as we were.
Absolutely furious.
Yeah. When the police turned up, they didn't even listen to me when I said, "Do you know who I am? I record a podcast."
Yeah, they didn't know who you are.
No one knows who I am, and that's my superpower. Yeah, so this isn't following our usual format, obviously, because the movie hasn't really come out yet, or it has, but it hasn't.
Quite.
So what we intend to do is give you 2 bonus episodes. It's going to be this episode now, which is going to be our spoiler-free impressions of Glass Onion.
Yeah.
And we're going to do another episode, which is our spoiler-full impressions of Glass Onion. And that episode will come out on the 30th of December, a week after it's been available on Netflix, so you should have plenty of time to watch it. Also, we're telling you in advance, so if you haven't seen it by then, you don't have to listen to this.
That's true.
So, this is the first of 2 bonus episodes, wherein upon, that's a word, we are going to talk about Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out. I always said Knives 8. My podcast has successfully reprogrammed my brain. And we're gonna sort of give you our general impressions of it without spoiling whom done it.
Yeah, or any other interesting twists and turns of the plot. It's going to be kind of we're not really going to talk about the plot. We're going to talk about our general impressions only, so it's safe.
It's a spoiler-free review, so we finally pivoted to just doing review podcasts, like I always wanted to. Our next season perhaps could be true crime.
I would say if you're a person that that really doesn't want to hear anything about the film before going in, doesn't want to hear about what any of the characters are or any details of the setting at all, then maybe skip this one, because we might touch on some of that stuff, but we're not going to go in depth or into any of the plot.
Yeah. So again, if you really want your Glass Onion unspoiled, I was going to say unsullied, but that sounded a bit sinister. Then just skip this podcast and then just listen to both of them on the 30th of December as a little treat, just before the new year. Go on, don't spoil yourself, but without spoiling yourself. If you know what I mean. So.
It's been a couple of months before we've done this.
It has before
we've done this. Yeah, my sense of time has become very distorted.
I'm not letting you get a do-over on that one.
I don't know the difference between before and since, or what time is anymore.
Surely you mean a be after for?
Be after for. Yeah.
I started as a fake joke, but then I made myself laugh. It's nice to know that my standards are so low. So, Peter, how have you been in the 2 months since we last recorded a podcast?
Well, I think it's been even longer than that, because I feel like since we last recorded a podcast, I moved.
But you were doing that while we were moving.
Yeah. But it's all done now, and I'm settled in the new place. It's generally thumbs up, and I have been we've both been enjoying lengthy YouTube videos lately, haven't we?
I don't. Look, you can't drag me in on this. You made me go down this rabbit hole, but sure, okay.
Well,
The long form video essay on YouTube has recently entered my consciousness, and it's probably going to get me fired. I mean, so, a 4-hour video where someone talks about a theme park. Sign me up.
Yes, I've watched that one too. It passes the time, doesn't it? So much time.
Well, what's that Akewood saying? It's an amusing diversion on the road to the grave.
Yeah, quite. So I've listened to one that was about the what was it? It was I don't want to talk about the main one that I'm going to mention yet, but there was another one that was about the sound that they used for Disney's kind of sting on their channel.
Are you the Wilhelm scream?
What? No, Disney's Disney's sting.
Disney sting.
Their little channel ident sound that they use on the Disney Channel.
Oh, well, no, I didn't know this one. I was thinking of something else. Carry on, please.
Yeah, so they've made, or someone has made a documentary for YouTube about this. Someone called Defunct Land. You know Defunct Land?
No.
They make lots of videos about old theme park stuff that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But this time they made one about the origins of a little like 4-note piece of music that's been used on the Disney Channel, except in this country where it's something else for some reason.
Yeah.
Around the world for years and years and years, and trying to figure out who actually wrote that little jingle, and which has been adapted into various different versions of it lots and lots of different times, and finding that process of figuring out who wrote it very difficult, and it becoming surprisingly interesting to try and find this out. So this video happened, and in the same week as this, a different video dropped, which was also a video about the origins of a sound that we have both seen, I believe.
Yeah.
And this is called Roblox_oof.mp3. And is a video by a YouTuber called H Bomber Guy, whose videos I have enjoyed in the past, and are generally very, very long essays on some topic.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was about the I think it's being killed sound in Roblox, which is sort of an oof sound, which has become completely outside of my awareness, has become a meme of some sort that just exists around TikTok and various other things that people use, and it's just a famous sound. But it turns out not one that originated in Roblox or was made for Roblox. And the story of where it actually comes from turns out to be very fascinating, but also just kind of a side note in what turns out to be the very bizarre story of the career of a sound designer and composer for video games known as Tommy Tallarico.
So it was an interesting thing when I heard that name, because I knew that I'd heard it somewhere before, and I couldn't place exactly where. And it turns out 2 to 3 hours into this video documentary that it's probably from Video Games Live, which is a thing that he invests a disproportionate amount of his time in now.
Yes. I have been certainly to a Video Games Live in London that he has been the host of. So he travels around with it sometimes, and sometimes fronts it himself. He has a particular stage persona, which in the past I have made fun of with friends occasionally. Him just being very bombastic and then overly defensive of, for some reason, of video games as a hobby. in front of a receptive audience to that. And I always kind of mocked his way of speaking about that, just imagining him kind of bursting into conversations about video games with a guitar saying, "Hey, wait a minute, video games are cool." And it turns out, because I was a little bit guilty about mocking him in this way, because I had nothing against Tommy Tallarico, really. I just found his stage persona quite funny. That I had no reason to feel guilty about it at all. The man is a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, having seen it myself, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I don't think there's any redeeming this. I don't really want to go into too much detail, because you might enjoy discovering how deep the rabbit hole goes yourself. But basically, imagine, I don't even know how to say it. He has basically exaggerated or lied about, I would say, almost every aspect of his career.
Yeah. How Harris has laid out his video as well is really good, in that sort of the first 30 minutes are just an explanation of where this oof sound comes from, and then he's like, this is the video ends here, this is the point where normal people can tune out. And then he starts to go down the Tommy Tallarico wormhole, and ending with a twist that I honestly didn't see coming, but like I'm totally not surprised by in hindsight.
Yeah, and just to be slightly cautious, I guess, I would say some of the things that he talks about are, there's a bit of wiggle room here, and he's careful to say, maybe I'm wrong, but it looks very much like I'm right about this being a lie. And so there is a bit of that, but also quite a lot of the things in the video, there's no way out. He just flat out lied about it. It's obvious that he lied about it. You've got the video footage showing that he lied about it next to the lie. It's just inescapable. So, while you'd usually want to be pretty cautious, I guess, about putting a video up that is basically a long takedown of someone and their whole career, because that might be thought of as slanderous, perhaps. There are so many receipts here that he probably didn't have to worry about it. So, yeah, that's the documentary that I really didn't realize was going to be about Tommy Tallarico at the beginning when I went into it. But I'm very glad it was, because it was, as I say, a real rabbit hole. And I do recommend checking it out if you have a spare. Is it 2 hours? It's something like that, isn't it?
I actually think, no, that one is 2. I think it's like an hour and 54 minutes.
Yeah.
The length of a film.
Yeah. If you want a feature-length documentary about a video game composer that you may or may not have heard of.
Almost certainly haven't heard of. And
having a just extremely odd life, then I recommend it. Roblox _oof.mp3.
Oh, jeez, that is weird.
So how are you doing, and what have you been up to lately that you'd like to bring up as a topic for discussion in this podcast that we do?
Well, that's so formal. What is a formality between friends, or between podcast host and guest? No, I went to a museum, Peter, as people do. You see, I went to Cambridge, which is a city in the United Kingdom, to visit some friends, and also, well, you see, I've got this story I tell about it where when I may have even mentioned it before on this podcast. I can't remember. I was directly responsible for the 2020 coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me just explain that. You
No
know
need.
how? No need. Let's move on. I had sex with a pangolin. So after eating a bat. So let me explain.
Please do. Hurry, speed your way towards the explanation.
Well, you know how you make a New Year's resolution each year, right? And on New Year's, and it's always something like that you'd really like to change. Like, you're like, oh, I want to lose some weight, or I want to, read more books or something. And it's always something that you like the sound of, but you somehow never quite get around to doing during the year. And then when you reach the next New Year, you're like, oh, well, I didn't do any of that shit. So, my 3 New Year's resolutions for 2020 were go to Cambridge one weekend, and go to 2 museums I've been meaning to go to for a couple of years but haven't quite gotten around to going to. And I was like, ha 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 ha, I've fooled the system, you see, because they're eminently achievable goals. It's one weekend. I was like, what could possibly stop me? What could stop me achieving these goals? Only the entire shutdown of society as I understand it.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, don't tempt fate. Is the upshot of this, I guess.
But you have got round to it.
I have a mere 2 years later than I intended to, because of the coronavirus pandemic. But never mind, I did it. I went to the thing.
All right, let's just give you a little, for old time's sake.
How dare you? How dare you?
And I would like you now to tell me about one, but not both of those museums.
Because we've decided to record 2 introductions, one introduction for each of the 2 podcasts we're doing separately.
And if you enjoyed that peek behind the curtain, then let me tell you that there aren't any more.
There are no subsequent ones. At the start of the next podcast, we may pretend that some time has passed, when in fact it hasn't. So I went to the Polar Museum at the Scott Polar Research Institute in Cambridge, and it may come as no surprise to you that I'm horny for Arctic exploration. I mean, I did that whole podcast about a movie set in the Arctic. I think we spoke in one of these sections in a previous podcast about how I dragged you to an exhibition on modern Arctic science at the Greenwich Museum.
Very willingly dragged, I will have to say. It was a lovely time. So
he was screaming and kicking the entire.
Scott's Polar. What was it called?
It's the Polar Museum at the Scott Polar Research Institute.
Scott, presumably named after the porridge oats.
Yes. Yep. Yes. No, it's named after Scott of the Antarctic, Robert Falcon Scott, a very famous British Arctic and Antarctic explorer,
and a fan of those oats.
Why do you keep talking about oats?
I've got to amuse myself somehow on this thing.
Sorry, I thought you might have been setting up a very complicated multi-layered joke about Lawrence Oates, the famous "I'm going out for a walk, I may be sometime" guy. But no, you weren't going for anything in that depth, were you?
No, depth is not for me.
Oh, listeners, why do you persist with this? Yeah, no. So, the Scott Polar Research Institute is a building in Cambridge. Top work there, Kieran. And the ground floor is a publicly accessible museum that you can get into for free, and you can look at all the stuff that they have. And they have a research library on the first floor that you can go in and look at if you let them know in advance that you'd like to look for stuff in the library. Otherwise, you can't. And then there's a mysterious third floor where they keep, the samples of the thing, I can only assume. Or, like offices or something like that.
Seems more likely.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of sort of really interesting things you can look. There isn't a lot there. I mean, it's a little smaller than I thought it would be. But they've got sort of displays of like kayaks and sledges and native artifacts and sort of clothing that Arctic explorers have worn from very old times all the way through to what they wear now in the modern ones, which includes some hilarious like leopard print mittens that may be a joke. And they've got quite a lot about my other favorite weird people have gone missing in the Arctic story, except it's a real one. The story of the 1845 Sir John Franklin expedition, which was lost with all hands in the Arctic because they were looking for the open polar sea thing, which doesn't exist. It's very interesting, actually, because they've got a copy of the last known message received from them, which a couple of their crew hauled a long, long way over the ice to leave in a cairn. Where they'd previously, in the previous summer, left a message saying basically everything was fine, and they came back to add to that note in the border, like they wrote all the way around the edge, basically. Everything's not fine. John Franklin has, in fact, died, and we are going to try and get across the ice to come back. Hope everything's good at home. And that was the only message that we ever found from them.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. It's a very interesting sort of story, actually, because they didn't find the ships, Erebus and Terror, that they'd taken until 2014, which is a lot of years to be looking for them. Yeah, I thought you'd actually like that section of the museum while I was there, because they looked for them for 15 years to try and find them and bring them home. Obviously, they died a long time before that, but they tried a number of bizarre things to get them back. Like they parked a boat. Yeah, that's the right word. They parked a boat off the coast of the Arctic.
Right.
This story's going great. And they caught 12 Arctic foxes because they knew that they roamed over huge ranges, and they put metal collars on them with the location of the boat inscribed in them. So if they saw and killed one of the Arctic foxes for food, it would have like a note saying, "Hi, if you've still got a compass, come here and we'll rescue you." And they got one back. They caught one of the Arctic foxes. It traveled 120 kilometers across the ice.
Wow.
And another method. They tried a lot of sort of routine methods, like sending people to look for them, but also Sir John Franklin's wife kept the whole thing in the public eye, so she kept fundraising for this, and they kept trying more and more deranged things to find them. Like they released a series of hot air balloons that would burst at a certain height and release ribbons, again with like a "please come to this place and we'll rescue you."
That is it's nice. I like I like stories where there are bizarre schemes.
Yeah. I thought you'd I can't remember exactly what it says on the balloon, because they have the packaging for one of the balloons, and it says it says something like "developed with scientific apparatus" or something. I thought,
how vague.
But it's just in that style of things at the time, where you would just write a huge claim for no reason on the front of, like, "We developed this with science," whereas now we're like, well, I mean, yes, you would. Yep, you would. It underpins our society.
Yes.
But yeah, I saw the whole thing in a couple of hours. And yeah, it's worth going. I would go. Also, it's free, which is nice.
It sounds like a good time.
Go in, look at the things, look at some statues which are probably definitely cursed. No, I had a good time. I think that sort of note from the cylinder in the Ken is probably the most interesting thing I saw there. They also have lots of little models of the ships that they took as well, which are fun to look at.
Right.
And I think that concludes what I have to speak of.
Well, okay then. Shall we talk about the next 8 minutes of... No, wait, that's not what we're doing today.
And it wasn't scripted, listeners. Yeah, so, okay. We are now going to talk about Knives Out? No, even I did it. We're now going to talk about the Glass Onion. And as we said, it's not going to be spoilery, but we are also advising that if you want to just go in completely blind, tune out here. Why would you listen to the first half an hour of a podcast about something you don't want to listen to? I don't know, but it seems to be most of our listeners.
So, first of all, I suppose it might be good to talk about a few of the circumstances surrounding its release.
Yeah, so Netflix has a deal with Rian Johnson to produce 2 Knives Out movies.
Yeah.
This one and untitled sequel that they've just started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And being as it's a Netflix release, and Netflix are really trying to drum up membership given their recent catastrophic losses. What they're doing is it's out in cinemas for, I think it's a week, in a large chain, in a couple of large cinema chains, and then it's pulled from the cinemas after that week, and it comes out on Netflix worldwide on the 23rd of December.
Yeah, and as I understand it, it's not a wide release as well, so you won't get it in all of the usual cinemas as well. You'll get it in select cinemas.
Yeah, it's more than I thought, but less than I'd hope.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to secure a couple of tickets for this, but at some point we were in a bit of doubt whether we would be able to.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to get tickets for the BFI premiere, but I kind of blinked and they sold out. So
yeah,
I think it sold out in 20 seconds or something. So then I was like, let's just watch it on the 23rd. But then they announced this weird co-showing deal where you can watch it in a cinema, and I was like, let's do that, and we did.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty poor overall. It because a lot of people have said as well when I've been reading about it that they, and I think I agree, it's one that's really fun to watch with an audience. They're also enjoying it, and it's fine to not do that as well. I think you'll have a perfectly fine time with the film without that. But we always envisioned going to see this one, I think, together in the cinema, and it doesn't feel good that we were nearly not able to because it just was not released widely enough. I think not all of this is necessarily on Netflix as well, because when I did a little reading into it, apparently some of the theatre distributors as well are a bit reluctant to deal with Netflix, given that they're kind of a rival for cinemas as a format, sort of thing. So there's been some tension between them and a lot of the US cinema chains in particular, I believe, which they've only recently kind of worked out a little bit. So that might have something to do with it as well. But I really wish this had a longer run, because I mean, from by all accounts, it's done really well in its limited run.
I have some facts. Would you like some facts?
I'd love some facts.
So the concept behind this is called underbooking, where you make people frisky for a thing by limiting its supply. And I agree that it sucks. They screened it in 700 cinemas worldwide, and it earned about $13 million. The first movie screened on about 3,000 cinemas worldwide and earned $41 million. So you can see that it almost certainly would have equaled or surpassed that.
Easily, yeah, because it was not very much of a phenomenon at the time. People were speaking that there was buzz about the film at the time, but I think it's had a bit of time to build up momentum now, so it would have easily beaten it out. I would have thought.
I mean, I think we discussed earlier in this podcast season that I'd never heard of it except when I was walking with you and a bus went by with an advert for it on the side, and I was like, yes.
Yeah. Right.
So Netflix's stock price has dropped by 60% this year because a terrible feature of our society is that all businesses attempt infinite growth, which is of course impossible because there aren't infinite people to buy your product.
Yeah.
So the fact that Netflix has hit the cap of people who are prepared to pay for Netflix, especially considering they keep putting the price up for the service, means that their investors have gone, oh no, and the stock price has plummeted. But also, when they made this deal for Knives Out, they were pretty flush, and they paid $469 million for the rights for 2 films.
Yeah.
Which has been described as an astonishing amount of money for 2 films.
Yeah.
Like, not even to make the movies, just for the rights to make them. So they were pretty flush with cash when they did that, and now they need to sort of exploit these properties as quickly as possible to get that turnaround. And so what they're hoping is that, well, and I guess we're complicit in this now, is that some people will see it in the cinema and go, shit, yeah, it's really good. And then everyone who doesn't have a Netflix subscription will go, oh, I'll subscribe to Netflix and watch this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't know whether it's I just don't know whether it is really going to be a subscription seller. I don't know how long that companies like Netflix and other streaming services can keep on just trying to gain subscribers. I can't be a subscriber to everything is the problem.
No, I mean, that's and that's part of the reason that why a few years ago Netflix added that feature where it's like, hey, we know you share your Netflix account, like here's 5 sub logins for your account, because they knew that everyone was doing it, because why wouldn't you? I mean, like, if you could split the cost of it between a couple of people, it's a great deal. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the fact that everything is switching to a subscription service is worrying, especially when you take in the sort of cost of living crisis that seems to be hitting worldwide now.
Mm-hmm.
And B, second thing that I'd hoped I'd have thought of by the time I reached this point in my sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially the second point.
Especially the second point.
Yeah.
I did have a second one, but listeners, this is the first podcast we've really recorded since Peter got his new setup going in his new house. And there was a lot of technical stuff at the start, and I'm very tired.
Yeah, it took us a while. Sorry. So, what was I going to say? I've lost it as well now. Hang on. All right. Yeah. So,
consummate professionals.
I am probably going to keep my Netflix subscription active until I have a chance to watch Glass Onion with my family, which I want to do around Christmas time when I go down to visit. After I've done that, I think I'm just going to kill it because I don't use it enough, and I'm not going to be subscribed to something for the sake of another Knives Out movie that's going to come out in another 3 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, I might subscribe to watch it then, but
for a month,
yeah. So I find the subscription model really sort of predatory and sinister when you consider about how much of this sort of relies on the fact that you forget. Like
Yeah.
that's how it works, isn't it? I mean, okay, they've got their heavy users who are really into it and are using it all the time, and they've got the people who sign up for it for a month and then have the fucking ADHD or whatever and forget. And and that's like a £10 a month subscription that you're paying for indefinitely forever. So I mean, I had that myself with I bought Microsoft Game Pass to play Sea of Thieves with some friends, and we played it on and off over a year. We'd play it for like a couple of evenings and then go 3 months and then play it a little bit more. And in the end, I ended up paying about £200 for Sea of Thieves. I just bought it on Steam because it ultimately worked out cheaper. I wasn't using anything else. But if I hadn't remembered, if I'd set a whole bunch of reminders to be like, every couple of months, are you using this? And if I hadn't done that, then I'd still be paying for it now. Just consuming money for a service. I don't like software as a service either, really. Especially for something like Photoshop, where you might not use, if you're a hobbyist, you might not use it in a month, but they'll still bill you for it.
Yeah, here's the way that I think it should work. During the first period, because they got to prove that you're willing to pay for something, I guess. They take the money when you first subscribe. After that, they take the money at the end of the usage period, and they either charge you just a small maintenance fee or nothing at all if you haven't actually used any of the service during that period. They'd never do it because that's disastrous for a lot of companies, but I wish there was some sort of law about it, which meant that you couldn't be charged for subscription services that you have not used at all.
No, it's and that seems like a really good and sane idea to me, and maybe we'll end up going that way now that literally everything is a subscription service. I mean, it makes more sense for things like software or something where you're paying to keep the lights on. But I agree that you really shouldn't be paying for it if you aren't using it, because this is what everyone's doing, is just signing up for a month then canceling it, and it's just an unnecessary burden on the consumer.
Yeah, or what it's doing is at absolute best, what it is it's asking you at the beginning of each month to predict whether you're going to use a thing during that month, which is not always possible to do. Of course, you're likely to think, oh, well, maybe I'll use it, and then not use it. So it's predatory in that way, and also in the way of, like you said before, you'll just forget. Because it just happens so automatically every month that you'll just forget. So I think I do feel like something's got to give with this, because we can't be subscribed to everything.
No.
I can't be.
It's ridiculous. And listeners, here's a top tip that will definitely mean that Audible will never sponsor this podcast. Go to if you are an Audible customer, go to the Audible app on your phone and go through the cancellation process. Do it now. We'll wait. Go through the cancellation process and say that you're paying too much for it, that it's that you aren't it's costing you too much per month, and it will automatically apply a 50% discount for 3 months. So go and do that now. Let's cost Audible some money. And if at the end of that period you find you're not using it and you're just accumulating Audible credits, cancel it. Just buy 3 books with the Audible tokens and then cancel your subscription. It doesn't matter. You can resume it later. You still get all the audiobooks you've bought in the meantime. They're never going to sponsor us now.
By the way, that works for various other things as well. Now TV it will do it for as well.
Adobe's, I mentioned them briefly earlier, but I think their subscription model is particularly predatory because with things like Netflix and Audible and whatever, when you get bored of it, you're just like, I'm out, and you click cancel, and then it begs. There's 3 to 5 pages of it begging you to stay and maybe throwing you a discount bone or whatever. But you just go, no, I'm done, and then you're out. Adobe's one, I don't know if it still works this way, but I remember this is how it worked when I looked into it previously, is you're buying a year's worth of service from them,
Yeah.
But you're paying monthly, right? So if you try and cancel at any point before that year is up, they just bill you the remaining amount of money.
Ooh.
Without and deny you service to it. So it's I think they got in some trouble over this, so I don't know if they still do it, but Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, I mean, if you've agreed to be signed up for a year contract or something, it can work like a mobile contract, I guess, where you just decide to end your contract early and
Pay out.
pay out the rest of it, but you still need to be able to use the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just found that disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah, that's awful.
Peter, should we steer this podcast away from just being totally about anti-capitalism for a little bit?
I was going to say that this conversation about Glass Onion is going really well, isn't it?
It's gotten deep. It's so we'd like you to get a Netflix subscription if you don't have one and watch it, because otherwise they won't make Knives Out 3, but also set a reminder on your phone to cancel it after a month. There we go.
Yeah.
Is that God, I feel like a shill. I might need to have a shower after this. God.
In its current form, I cannot recommend Netflix really, but I can recommend watching Glass Onion.
Yeah, you so let's just be clear, you can't watch it anymore in a cinema. It ended today as we record this. So fuck you, I guess, if you wanted to watch it in a cinema.
Yeah.
No one is going to sponsor us.
No. Right. Okay. So the film. Should we do the film?
So it stars. So I'm gonna read the cast and the cast, their character name, and a little bit about them. Yes, you're right. This has been lifted straight from Wikipedia, but I'm going to mentally cut out the spoilery bits for you. That's the service you're paying for, listeners. And I hesitate to remind you, you pay nothing for this service. So,
Yes.
So we've got, making his return appearance, Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, a detective. That's all I can say from that sentence.
All right.
So he is the same as he ever was. Hilariously, Ryan Johnson considered making him have a different accent for each film. Just completely unexplained, just another totally random accent.
It's a very funny idea, but I'm glad they didn't go with it because I love the voice so much.
And Daniel Craig actually worked with a voice coach to get back into the voice for it. Which it shows his dedication to it. I think I liked it. So we've also got Edward Norton playing Miles Bron, a billionaire owner of a large technology company called Alpha. We've got Janelle Monáe playing Cassandra Andy Brand, his ex-business partner. We've got Catherine Hahn playing Claire DeBella, the governor of Connecticut, now running for the Senate. We've got Leslie Odom Jr. as Lionel Toussaint, the head scientist for Mars Company. Katie Hudson playing Birdie J, a former supermodel turned fashion designer. Dave Bautista as Duke Cody, a Twitch streamer and men's rights activist. Oh, he is vile. Jessica Henwick as Peg, Birdie's assistant. Madeline Klein as Whiskey, Duke's girlfriend and Twitch channel assistant. Okay. I was going to skip this, but I'm going to read. Noah Segan as Daryl, a slacker who lives on Miles Island.
Yes.
Noah Segan, of course, played Trooper Wagner in Knives Out.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I didn't see that when I was watching the film.
No, he looks very different, which is a testament to, I guess, like makeup and costuming. Well done, guys. In lesser roles, we have Jackie Hoffman as Ma Cody, Duke's mother, and Dallas Roberts as Devon DeBella, Claire's husband. Should we talk about these people, or is that spoilery? I think that might. I think we might have to save that for the next one because that will probably verge into spoilers.
Yeah, there's some stuff that you can't really go into without getting into specifics. So, I mean, I've written some notes, some of which are unspoilery. So, shall I just start reading some of the things that I wrote in the kind of day or two following watching it?
Okay, so I'll just go through the list of people again, and we can say anything we'd like to have said about them. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Benoit Blanc again, and the movie starts during the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
And Benoit Blanc is not dealing well with it. Is probably the furthest I can go with that.
Yeah, it's your classic kind of detective is just not dealing well with not having a case kind of setup.
Yeah, this felt like an absolute callback to the Sherlock Holmes stuff where he's between cases and needled to the tits on cocaine.
Yeah, although in this case he's finding other ways that are more kind of up to date and topical, I guess, of dealing with it.
Very painfully relatable.
Yeah,
I saw myself during lockdown in this scene, like more than I'd like to imagine.
And about Blanc, I said, well, what I wrote down, and the more distance I have from the film, the less I agree with what I originally wrote. But I'm going to say it anyway because it was how I felt coming out of the film. Which was that I didn't think that he kind of stole the show quite as much as he did in Knives Out, but he still has a lot of classic moments, which is weird to say, like just a couple of films in that there can be a classic Blanc moment, but it already feels like there can be. And when I've been thinking back on the film now, I actually think no. Actually, there were loads of Blanc bits that I really liked, loads of them. I keep on remembering new ones that I'd kind of temporarily forgotten about, and then like what one where I guess in a non-spoilery way, I'll say he keeps on using a particular word over and over again to comic effect. I remembered that one the other day, and I think he does actually have loads and loads of really, really great moments. But what I think he maybe doesn't have is anything that kind of reaches the heights of that whole donut hole within donut hole kind of speech that he does.
Yeah, I thought he felt a little toned down during some of the movie, but they really stick the landing. It's great. That's as far as I can go in this section.
And I mean, I guess as we go into the other characters, I sort of had a general comment about the characters in general as well, which is that I thought, and this is a really mild criticism, I guess, of the film, is that with Knives Out, I really enjoyed all of the characters without exception. I just found them universally enjoyable. There wasn't one character which I felt like the film could have done without. They all were absolutely top notch. I really enjoy the characters a lot in Knives Out. In Glass Onion, I enjoyed the characters fine, but I definitely felt like there were some that seemed a bit underwritten or underused, or maybe just were edited in a way that just made them feel like I didn't know who they were as characters quite as well as I felt I knew the ones in Knives Out. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and it's something I think I will come back to with you in the subsequent podcast because I want to talk about how those characters are introduced. I don't disagree, but I think, again, it sort of suffers from the comparison to Knives Out where you get this sort of pin sharp introduction of everybody right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
With their name on a card right next to them and their relationship. So, any film which doesn't follow that immediate pattern
Right.
is gonna suffer for that, I think. But I do agree in principle. Been a bit hamstrung by the whole spoiler thing.
I want to emphasize that I do think there are a few characters who are really, really great and on par with characters in
absolutely.
Knives Out. And so I'd put in that box, I'd put Edward Norton's character, Miles Bron, great, really just fantastic moments throughout. And I would put in Janelle Monáe's character, really great. And I'm gonna run into the problem that I don't have a list of actors and their roles in front of me at the moment, so I'm going to forget their.
Oh, I'm sorry for not preparing one for you like I normally do.
I have to refer to a card through these all the time because I don't remember. The character is Birdie J. I'm going to remember either the actor or the character, but not
That's
both.
Kate Hudson.
Yeah, I think that's a really great character.
She gives me vibes of I can't remember her name. The one who runs Flam in Knives Out.
A little bit, yeah. But Ditzia, yeah.
Oh god, if such a thing was even possible. Joni Thromby, played by Toni Collette.
Right.
Definitely didn't just Google it.
And I've only got one of the names now, Bautista.
Dave Bautista.
That's the one. Yeah. His character really good, I think, in it as well. And then there were ones like the scientist. What's the name of the scientist guy?
Lionel Toussaint, played by Leslie Odom Jr.
Yeah, he's one of the ones where I felt it was maybe a bit underused a little bit, but it is in it and is decent in it, is fine in it. Has seem to recall had a good bit at the beginning of the film during his character introduction, but I couldn't, thinking back, I couldn't tell you a lot about that character. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
is it a spoiler to say that? It might be.
Yeah, maybe. I think he's there to set up some concepts more than be a fully developed character, which is a little bad for this movie. But, he's still fun in the scenes that he's in. So, I don't disagree with your assessment.
But yeah, as I say, there are loads of characters in it that I really did enjoy a lot. And I think the cast overall is strong. I just think that there was a bit of a better balance between the different cast members in the first film, in Knives Out. By the way, while I'm on the first film, Knives Out, I think we're both agreed that these should be called a Benoit Blanc mystery, right?
Yeah. I think we even mentioned this in a previous episode, is that I can imagine people throwing chairs around in a room at Netflix because this is, of course, the movie is titled Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, which it isn't, because it should be Glass Onion, Benoit Blanc mystery. Probably then brackets, he's the detective from Knives Out. That's the title I would have gone with, but I'm not neurotypical, so
and he's really the only thing that is carried over from the films, apart from the fact that it's a mystery, I guess, is the other thing. But they don't really go in for sly references to Knives Out during it or anything like that. You could watch them in either order. It would work. Yeah. It's totally works on its own. It's good that way, I think, because I think you can enjoy it just as much if this was your introduction to the character and then go back and watch Knives Out. If I had to give people an order that they should watch it in, I'd still say probably in chronological order.
Chronological order is the one to go with. Interestingly, I was thinking about, and this movie takes place less than a year after the events of Knives Out. So it's got a busy fucking lifestyle,
Yeah.
Benoit Blanc. And you can work that out because the toxicology report in the movie Knives Out has a date on it, and this movie has a date on it as well. So there you go. You can
I
tell.
didn't actually know how you could tell that.
Yeah. Time is passing and all that. Favorite characters. I mean, Janelle Monáe's character is kind of delightful. Very powerful performance, very good in every scene she's in. Dave Bautista, again, he's excellent at playing an MRA asshole. Oh God, I can't even talk about the thing that his defining characteristic, which is a spoiler. But yeah, what an asshole! And he plays him so well.
Yeah, it's a really good character archetype. I would say that's the other thing that this film takes from Knives Out is that it's very happy to make fun of the rich and powerful, I guess.
Yeah, and well, whereas in Knives Out they were one rich, obnoxious family, in this movie they're a rich and obnoxious group of friends.
Yes,
and Benoit Blanc bears them down to the bone with the same efficiency he does in Knives Out. And I think that's sort of harkening back to like, I think we've mentioned it with Columbo before, where like he's never going after somebody who's poor. It's always someone who is rich and thinks they can get away with it.
Yeah,
and that's a good trope to use, I think.
It's a really satisfying dynamic to have in a detective story, I think, and it's one of the reasons that I'm excited as well for the series that he's coming out with next year called Poker Face.
Which might be the first our listeners are hearing of it. Do you want to talk about it a little more?
Yeah, so there's a series called Poker Face that is it's recently been confirmed because I read it in an interview with Ryan Johnson. It's the first series he's made, and it's on Peacock, I think. I'm not sure what Peacock is. It's another one of these damn services, I think.
Jesus Christ.
And but it's like a 10 episode long series or something like that, and it is a detective series in the mold of Columbo. So it's not so much a whodunit, more of a how catch 'em, more of a kind of interplay between the culprit and the detective trying to outsmart each other.
A Murder of the Week show.
Yeah. And separate stories each week as well.
Peacock is NBC's streaming platform.
Ah, yes, because of the
Peacock
NBC
logo. Yeah.
Peacock
logo.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd guess that, but I just Googled it and it's true.
So yeah, that's what's that is what that is about. When you watch the trailer for that, which is available, you may notice the Columbo font that is even used.
Yeah.
in the trailer, so that's very much what they're going for with that, and you can really tell, both from that and just from a lot of aspects of Benoit Blanc that Ryan Johnson just really loves Columbo and that character and the sorts of ways that he gets under the skin of the people that he's investigating.
I remember from when we were speaking of Knives Out when they were saying they originally had this sort of like laundry list of like tics and features that Benoit Blanc had that slowly got pared down as the script got more and more complete when they realized they didn't want it to be just like this totally neurotic mess. One of the things that I really noticed during Glass Onion, which I think will probably suffer for forcing everyone to watch it on a small screen, is that the cinematography is fucking incredible. Like, it's like one breathtaking shot after another, and I was like, wow. There's a number of shots which follow each other in rapid succession, which are all just very nice to look at.
Yeah,
I can't. The spoiler-free version of this is difficult.
well, I mean,
It pretty.
What I can say is the main location that they use is kind of simultaneously just stunning and ludicrous in a way that seems very deliberate.
Yeah,
and is very enjoyable.
Mm.
Something else I would like to say, and that I can't really go into very much without again getting into spoiler territory, but I'm sure we'll love to talk about it when we do.
How much of this podcast is us like saying we can't talk about it?
Yeah, most of it, I think.
Yeah.
But I think perhaps you'll agree that in a lot of ways it feels like just a weirdly timely film. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah. It's very of the era. I mean, that was actually a thing that Rian Johnson was going for, even with the original Knives Out, is to try and capture the zeitgeist in the movie, because that's what the Sherlock Holmes books and the Agatha Christie books were doing at the time. Is I mean, they weren't thinking of it in those terms, but they were writing down exactly what was going on in society at that moment as part of their plots, and it sort of crystallizes. So a lot of people get their impressions of, like, I mean, if you think about Victorian London, the first thing that pops into my head is the introduction to the adventures of Sherlock Holmes from like the 80s, you know. So a lot of people get their impressions of these time periods from these detective fiction things that are so popular. They've just sort of entered the collective unconscious as archetypes for these things.
But it feels so up to date in a way that it feels it feels even more relevant now than it must have done when he was writing it.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
Certainly the pandemic stuff was a little painful for me to watch, as I was like, it's is there a word for like bad nostalgia, like pathos nostalgia? I don't know, because the initial sort of pandemic setup scenes, I was like, oh fuck, it's been 2 years, and it feels simultaneously like they're reminding me of something that happened a million years ago and of something that's too soon. So it's so well done.
I do sometimes not want, especially when events in the world have been terrible, not want to see the dramatization of it immediately. I think during the trailers initially, I can't even remember what it was, where there was a film about something, and I was like, I feel like this literally just happened. How is there a film?
Oh god. Is there anything we can talk about which isn't spoiler ridden?
I don't know. I think that's all we can. Well, I tell you one thing that I can say is that I think since I've watched this film, which was a good week ago now, I have been thinking about it a whole lot, which is generally a good sign. If I don't like something that much or I'm indifferent to it, I tend to forget about it quite quickly. But I'm thinking about it a lot and just kind of remembering stuff that I'd forgotten about it as well. It's really vivid in my memory at the moment, which is usually a good sign. But my initial impression of it is that I don't think it's quite as good as Knives Out, but it's in the same conversation with me. It can stand beside it, you know, proudly.
Yeah, I mean, any sequel, especially to a movie that you consider absolutely iconic, is gonna suffer, right? I mean, if this was a standalone murder mystery, like, and we were being introduced to these characters for the first time, I would be all over this. It would be incredible. I wouldn't be able to stop talking about it. But it's a sequel to a really good movie, and I feel like the vibe of this podcast is kind of like we're shitting on Glass Onion, and like, please don't take that away from this.
No.
It is an excellent film. Like it's in my top 10, I think, and the only reason it might not be higher than that, the only reason I can't be more specific about that is if when I see a movie like this in the cinema, one that I'm mega into, the first thing I want to do is go and see it again to sort of like, you know, reaffirm the details in my head and to enjoy it a second time and maybe like look for things that I missed the first time. And I couldn't this time.
Right. Due to aforementioned problems,
due to underselling bullshit. But I mean, I really enjoyed the movie. It's serious when it needs to be, and it's funny when it wants to be, and it's so well written.
Yeah, and I would say just tonally something that this is neither a positive nor a negative, but just something that I was aware of while watching it is that it goes a little bit sillier than Knives Out in a lot of different ways.
I don't know if it's a spoiler to say this or not, so maybe plug your ears for like 30 seconds, listeners. But like, I thought it was very silly, and then some stuff happened that made me go, "Oh, it's not quite as silly as I thought it was being," which is good. So, my silliness quotient went down as the movie went on.
Well, I would say something that it has in common with Knives Out is that it is out to subvert some of your expectations as to where the story is going, but the way that it approaches that is completely different to how it approaches it in Knives Out. But no, I absolutely agree. I had such a good time with it when I went in. I was there were moments in it where my mouth was hanging open because I was just appreciating so much what it was doing on the screen, and the things that had just been revealed, and it's a really impressive piece of work that is hindered only by the fact that it was preceded by Knives Out, a film which I think of as nearly perfect.
Yeah. So, do we want to leave it there then for this episode?
I think we do, and next time we'll be able to elaborate a little bit on exactly what the deal is.
Okay, so I think we've got the point across, but listeners, I guess our general opinion of this movie is it is excellent, and you definitely should watch it. However, you won't be able to watch it until the 23rd of December, so sozzles. It's not our fault, but if you don't have a Netflix subscription, you should get one and watch it, and then maybe cancel it just straight away afterwards. But we want those numbers up so that they definitely make a sequel to this sequel. Maybe that one will be really awful, and then we can get like a lot of badness talking out of it.
I feel like if the afterlife exists and it was just Rian Johnson making Benoit Blanc films forever, that'd be all right.
And wouldn't that be hell for Rian Johnson too? Oh.
Wow.
All right. God. I don't have my notes on how we outro the podcast. Hang on. Scroll down. Okay. So I realize this is a weird episode, but Peter, what are you thinking of the film so far? No. No. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at podcast@8minutemovies.co.uk. If you like the show in general, I mean, aside from the special bonus episodes, you should tell a friend or leave a comment wherever you listen to it, if that is indeed possible. Peter, where can you be found on a dying social media platform?
You can find me at Kestrel Pie. I'm also Kestrel Pie on various of the other platforms that I'm not really posting on, but I've certainly made accounts on just in case.
Yeah. And I'm Kieran J. Walsh on Twitter. And oh Christ, I should register a fucking co-host or whatever, shouldn't I? I'm not using Hive. It's only an app. I need a website I can doom scroll. Can't all be on the phone. Oh yeah, and we have a Twitter account for the show as well, which is 8-Minute Movies with an 8, but like you should follow that. Hashtag social media engagement. All right, but bye listeners. Love you. Bye.
Bye.